Hi, this is Irish Eyes True Crime.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the strange case of Nicola Bulley, part 5. Today I'm going to talk about the police and can we trust them?
To appeal for witnesses in the case of Nicola Bulley. This is a 45-year-old lady from the local area who sadly went missing last Friday morning at about 9:15.
So I just noticed there at the time that she said she first went missing, it was 9:15
a.m. She was last seen walking her small brown dog on the towpath of the River Wyre. The dog was found about an hour later, as was her mobile phone.
So they have her going missing at 9:15 and she was last seen on the towpath and the dog was found an hour later, so that'd make it 10:15. So that'd mean that the last person to seen her was on the towpath at 9:15 and Penny didn't find the dog till 10:15.
So her family are very concerned, as are we. We've mounted a really intensive operation to try and find Nicola, including a number of specialist officers from our Northwest Underwater Regional Search Unit and specialist investigators who are supporting the family, as well as a lot of partners like Bowland Mountain Rescue, Lancashire Fire and Rescue and others, and the Coast Guard. We thank them very much, as well as local people who've turned out in force, who are obviously equally concerned for Nicola. And we appeal for anyone who may have been driving through the village of St Michael's last Friday morning at about 9:15, or who may have dash cam footage that could be of use to us, or people who may have been dog walking in the area or on the towpath to come forward. They can ring 101, or if they have a sighting of Nicola, 999.
So this is very early on and they were sure this 9:15 and they were sure nothing happened to Nicola. So they only needed the dash cam footage for 9:15 on, but yeah, wouldn't it have been safer to have it from early that morning anyway?
How do you think she got to St Michael's? Because her home is probably 3 miles away, is it?
I'm not aware of how she got from her home area to the village, but we believe she made on foot with the dog.
So this is a week on. They're not really sure of anything, but they're sure they don't need dash cam footage from that morning, just from 9:15.
Good afternoon and thank you for coming. I'm Superintendent Sally Riley. I'm the Operations Manager for Lancaster, Morecambe and Wyre. It's been a week now since Nicola Bulley from Inskip in the local area went missing. Her family, particularly her partner, her children, her parents and her sister, are in real agony while she remains missing. And I want to pay particular tribute for their patience and dignity and strength at this time. In the last 7 days since Nicola went missing, a week ago today, the police have done a number of enquiries to try and find Nicola and to bring her home to her family. In particular, the search has focused on the riverbank and the River Wyre here in St Michael's. An unprecedented number of search resources have been searching the river and the bank. This includes drone, the helicopter, police divers, sonar equipment, pole cameras, underwater drone, and staff wading the shallower parts of the river. We've also had search dogs that are specially trained in the area from both the boat and the riverbank. and this has included the area where Nicola went missing, but also upstream of where she went missing, and the 15 kilometres or so down to the sea.
So here we heard Superintendent Sally Riley say about the vast amount of resources used in the search for Nicola. If you rewind, you will hear her say they had staff wading the shallower parts. They searched upstream, around the bench area, and downstream, the whole way out to the sea. The banks along that stretch would be shallow, especially all the way up along to past where Nicola was found. So that means the police and Peter Falden thoroughly searched the riverbed and ruled it out, because Peter, as he said, has complete evidence of ruling that out. And Sally Riley said the staff waded along the shallow parts of the river, along the banks. So where was Nicola? Then you have the fact that as Peter Fallen had his dogs, the police had their dogs. They also got in several, and I looked it up, several different dog teams. Now, if the riverbed was ruled out, as Peter said, and he said he can categorically say that it was ruled out, so that means the police think that Nicola was in the reeds along the banks. Now, you've had so many of these dogs going up along the banks, and they're specially trained dogs to smell the scent, like from really deep down. And along them banks wouldn't have been that deep. So what's the chances that not one of them dogs smelled her body along the banks?
We've been assisted in this by the Coast Guard, by RNLI, by colleagues from other forces, and the Lancaster Area Search and Rescue, and I want to thank them for their assistance. Unfortunately, we have not still found Nicola, but our search does continue. As well as the river search, we've also undertaken a 1 kilometre physical search of the open ground in a radius from the point where she last went missing. This has included open ground, empty buildings and their gardens, to no avail so far. As well as search officers, we've had a number of uniformed staff in the area, officers and PCSOs receiving community intelligence and offering that visible presence to the local community to answer any questions and to allay any concerns. At the same time, a dedicated team of investigators who often assist missing people inquiries has been working on this tirelessly. They have undertaken extensive house-to-house inquiries. They've checked numerous CCTV, dash cam and ring doorbell footage. They've traced and now spoken to a number of key witnesses. They have spoken to people in the community who have information about Nicola's lifestyle, her daily walks and so on. All this has built up a really rich picture of data that's allowed us to have a very tight timeline, some details of which we've already released, about Nicola's last whereabouts and what she was doing last Friday morning. I'm just going to take you through some of those. So, at 8:43 last Friday, Nicola was seen on the river path walking towards the Iron Bridge. A few minutes later, at 8:47, she was seen in the lower field with her dog, Willow, and her mobile phone, which was on view. At 8:53, she sent an email to her boss on her phone, and at 9:01, she joined a Teams work call. All of this was normal behaviour for Nicola. This was not out of the ordinary, and nothing different or unusual happened during those calls and emails. At 9:10, she was seen in the upper field. The dog was off the lead. Again, this was normal. The dog was not in its harness and the lead wasn't on the dog. which was all part of Nicola's daily routine.
So since this, we found out that there's a newer timeline, and none of these witnesses that saw her on the towpath or in the fields is on the newer timeline. The only one that's on it is the 9:10, so we're all confused about this. Plus, there's pictures of Willow in that field with the harness on, so sometimes she did have it on, sometimes she didn't.
At 9:20, through inquiries we've made, we believe that her phone was on the bench. At 9:30, the Teams meeting ended, but Nicola's phone remained dialed in. At 9:33, a witness found Nicola's dog Willow running between the gate to the field and the bench where the phone was located. Also found by that witness was the dog harness, which was on the grass between the bench and the river's edge. Therefore, the time that we are particularly interested in is between 9:10, the last confirmed sighting, and at 9:20, when Nicola's phone was found on the bench.
So they think something happened to her from the last witness to the slow walk it took her the 10 minutes to the bench.
Sorry, not found on the bench, when Nicola's phone was on the bench, believed to be on the bench, found at around 9:33. The witness made numerous inquiries to try and find the owner of the phone, not knowing whose phone it was, and indeed whose dog it was. That led the witness to meet up with other people who did recognise the dog as Nicola's, and the school to which Nicola's children go was alerted at 10:50, as was her family. This means that we've only a 10-minute window in which we cannot account for Nicola's movements. The inquiry team has undertaken a number, as I said, of dashcam, CCTV and ring doorbell footages. This has allowed us to eliminate any trace so far of Nicola having left the riverside, which is really important. So we believe that Nicola was in the riverside area and remained in the riverside area. We remain open to any inquiries that might lead us to question that, but at this time, we understand that she was by the river. Our main working hypothesis, therefore, is that Nicola has sadly fallen into the river, that there is no third party or criminal involvement, and that this is not suspicious, but a tragic case of a missing person. This is particularly important because speculation otherwise can be really distressing for the family and for Nicola's children. In terms of what we would like from the public, I would like to thank them, particularly Nicola's friends, neighbours and the community of St Michael's and the wider area, who've come out in force to help in the search for Nicola. I do have an update on the clothing that Nicola was last seen wearing, and this is something that the public who live in the area or who walk their dogs on the river path near to St Michael's or downstream of St Michael's towards Morecambe Bay can look out for. They are an ankle-length black quilted gilet jacket, a black Engelbert Strauss waist-length coat, which was worn underneath the gilet, tight-fitting black jeans, long green walking socks tucked into her jeans, ankle-length green necked wellies, and a necklace and a pale blue Fitbit. It's really important that the public pay heed to those very specific clothing descriptions, please, because factual sightings of those items would be very useful to us. We also appeal for any remaining dashcam footage that may not yet have been submitted to the police in this inquiry, particularly if people have that relating to the Garstang Lane area of St Michael's. Please can the public continue to report only factual information that they have and not speculation as to what may have happened to Nicola, because this is a distraction to the police inquiry and not helpful for the family. I would also appeal to the public to keep themselves safe in this inquiry. People going out at night in the darkness could fall into the river and face other hazards. Likewise, if they go out in boats on the river, please only do so if you've got experience in doing that. We don't want people to be in danger. Lastly, I'd like to underline the support given to the family. It is, as I've said, an agonising time for them. Nicola has 2 little girls, a partner, sister and parents, as well as many, many friends and neighbours and well-wishers in the local community. We are supporting her family with specially trained officers and staff, and I'd like to thank the wider community for all the support that they've given during this very difficult inquiry. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Can I ask, is there any data from the Fitbit, the newer Fitbits, you can track the location using the phone?
Yeah, all the telephony and digital inquiries are being handled by the inquiry team, so all of that data will be looked at. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, I know earlier in the week you were searching the river for signs that she'd fallen in. Did you find anything? Is there anything to support that hypothesis?
No, not so far. Unfortunately not. That's why I particularly appeal around any clothing that may be matching the description I've given and that could be found, but nothing has been found in the river. I should say that the river is tidal below the weir, so if you see repeated searches of particular areas of the river, it's not necessarily because we found something of note, it's because the river movement is complex and we are taking advice from academic specialists in water movement around currents and so on.
Just one other thing, has she made any contributions on the Teams call? Has she spoken or was it just on you?
Not that I understand, no. And again, this was normal. It was a large Teams call. She was one of many people on the call and I wouldn't have expected to necessarily to participate actively. Thank you.
How do you know the phone was on the bench at 9:20 exactly?
Through telephony inquiries that we've done relative to the phone itself rather than through a witness.
So what was the number at the top of it?
No. Hi.
Today, obviously, lots of friends and family have been out in fields. Has any new information come from any of that with people holding up pictures of people?
Not that I'm aware of today. Clearly, the public are very well intentioned and have given us a lot of information, quite rightly. They don't know whether it is of particular use or not, and obviously we can judge that, can't we? But so far, it's taken a lot of effort and diligence to go through all the information that's been provided, and we'll continue to do that right through the weekend and into next week. Hello.
Earlier today, one of Nicola's friends said that she was holding a new torch of hope because of the amount of calls that police have had. Can you tell us a bit about how many calls or pieces of information you have from members of the public who have got any idea about the number?
I can't give you a number, but I know there have been a lot of calls today. Clearly, 7 days on is a really good time for people to think back, particularly if they have perhaps a particular work pattern where maybe they might be working on a Friday or not working on a Friday. It's again Friday today, and that will probably take them back to what they were doing last Friday. Were they driving through St Michael's at around 9:15? Were they dropping children off? Were they going off to work? What were they doing last Friday that they might always do? That would be helpful for us to know if it's relevant to the inquiry. Hello.
Can you just explain to me why you're so sure she didn't leave the riverside? Are there no kind of cross-country routes, no other ways out at all that could have been taken?
Yes, several of the exits from the riverside area are either locked or they're covered by CCTV. So we've been able to look at that CCTV, negate Nicola leaving the local area. The areas that are not covered by CCTV is where we've been particularly interested in dashcam footage. So that's Garstang Lane leading to the A586. If we can definitively cover off that 10-minute window in particular and the few minutes either side, then we will know definitively that she has not left the area because of the lack of footage or footage showing that she didn't pass by. But we are as sure as we can be that Nicola did not leave the area.
There's nowhere that there were cars parked, so she could have been in a car, for example, therefore we wouldn't have seen it on a dash cam or something
No,
like that.
no. All the exits to the area that she was, as I say, are either locked, covered by CCTV, or Garstang Lane, we're appealing for dashcam footage to cover that gap.
When you've seen the river, it doesn't look like the kind of river you could easily fall in by accident, does it?
At the point where the bench is located, there is quite a steep drop to the river, albeit not high, it is steep. And therefore, whilst I don't want to speculate as to what may have happened, it is our working hypothesis that she's entered the water accidentally, and that's why there is no further physical evidence on the field. She can swim, yes.
How deep is it in that particular stretch?
It's different depths, actually, which is why we've had some staff wading the river and some staff underwater search. But as I say, the sheer number, actually an unprecedented amount of technical equipment with the sonars, the pole cameras, the dogs, the surface searches, the underwater search, it is really so very thorough that we have discounted finding anything in that immediate area underwater.
Are there any other factors with Nicola that may have contributed to the situation? So was she ill, or was she taking any medication or any underlying conditions?
We're not considering, we've clearly considered the whole picture, but that is not relevant at this time, no, not at all.
Can you check that? So 10-minute windows between 9:10 when she was last seen and 9:20 when the phone's not moving around the bench?
Correct. So Nicola was last seen by a witness at 9:10 and the phone was back on the bench at 9:20 or thereabouts, yes.
So if they've ruled out in front of the bench at this stage, they're now thinking that she has went further down the river. So that means they think it's not an accident now, that she's went off herself. And Nicola actually set the scene herself. Now they said from the last sighting at 9:10 that her phone moved slowly to the bench and arrived there at 20 past. So that means the 10-minute window that they're talking about is from the phone landing at the bench to when Penny found the phone. Is that why when the police divers came back on the coroner's request, that they were in the area they were in further down? As the coroner said, they were looking at the banks, so probably the stability of the banks. And there's no way Willow couldn't follow her down there. And she still had only 10 minutes to get over the stile, walk all the way down all along the river, trying to get over stuff all the way along to follow the river. And she still had to find a deep enough spot to do it herself, which I don't think there is that on that side, maybe the far side of it, on the bend, and do all that without being seen. And remember, the police don't believe that she left the field, so they're probably ruling out the footpath up along and out onto the road, across the road and down along the river again.
Working hypothesis being passed on to the family and how
Yeah. All of the timeline details, what the police have been doing every day, what we're intending to do over the next few days is all relayed to the family so that they're kept updated and are aware. Yeah.
Why would you imagine that she didn't have her phone in her hand or in her pocket when she fell?
The dog was off the lead. This was normal for the dog to run about, and Nicola was on a Teams call, which again, it would be normal for her not necessarily to participate in actively and just to have the phone to listen in effectively.
But you normally have it either
You do, but anything could have happened with the dog whereby Nicola may have gone, and I don't wish to speculate in that we don't know, but it is possible as the dog was loose and off the lead that there may have been an issue with the dog that led her to go near to the water's edge, She puts the phone down to go and deal with the dog momentarily, and Nicola may have fallen in. So that is a possibility.
The dog was dry.
The dog was dry, yes. Hello.
Sorry, that was my sort of question. The dog was off its harness.
Yes.
It was normal.
Yes.
Was there any chance the dog was itself coming in the river, or the river and she's falling trying to get? Is that what his working theory is?
We don't believe the dog was in the river because the dog, we believe, was dry, and the witnesses who were part of the timeline that I've laid out have not described the dog, for example, swimming in the river or jumping into the river. So we assume the dog didn't get into the river, but we don't know why Nicola may have entered the water if she did.
And how long will the sort of missing persons inquiry be? The scale it is in terms of search operations.
Well, clearly, a 15-kilometre stretch of river is long, and therefore, you know, our partners continue to assist us in that. So there are lots of things that we'll be doing over the weekend in terms of water, surface, and riverbank searching. And our partners will be working with us into next week, but it's too early to say at this stage how long it will be. I'm going to take one more question, if I may, from someone who hasn't yet asked a question. Thank you. This is a large rural area with a long stretch of river. All I can say is that we are doing absolutely everything possible. We are working tirelessly, long hours, with a very large team of both plainclothes and specialist uniformed officers to try and do everything we can to bring Nicola home to her family. But it is a very complex and challenging situation, and we hope for a good outcome.
The possibilities, as the way you said it, seem quite limited, small.
Well, as each day goes on, we become very much more concerned for Nicola's safety. But we have the best minds and the best trained officers available to us, as well as a number of very specialist partners. So every potential possible way of improving our chances of finding Nicola are being exploited. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this morning. So I'm going to firstly take you through the incidents that led up to Nicola being reported missing. I'll go through a timeline of events for you, followed by a number of topic areas that I believe are of interest to you. Also going on to a couple of areas that have been highlighted in the press, which I want to explain in detail. So first of all, Nicola Bulley was reported missing on Friday the 27th of January after dropping her children at St Michael's School in St Michael's. As soon as she was reported missing, following the information that was provided to the police by her partner Paul, and based on a number of specific vulnerabilities that we were made aware of, Nicola was graded as high risk. That is normal in a missing person from investigation with the information we were in possession of. She was immediately treated as a MISPA, and then on the Monday, the 30th of January, I was identified as the senior investigating officer. At that time, we reviewed all the information that had been gathered in the days prior to her being reported. And as any senior investigating officer does, you form a number of hypotheses. That is, scenarios which are possible from the information to hand. Those hypotheses included the one that she possibly could have gone into the river, that there could have been third-party involvement, and lastly, that she could have left the area voluntarily. Those hypotheses have remained in place throughout, are reviewed regularly, as is normal with any SIO running a major investigation. At the initial stages, based on the information I received, I made it clear that it was my working hypothesis at that time, based with all the facts, that the main hypothesis I was working on at that time was that Nicola had gone in the river. This has been misconstrued in the press and said that that was what I said. I said that was my main working hypothesis at that time, and that remains my main working hypothesis. I think it's clear to see that the amount of effort, hours worked, resources that we have put into this investigation, that we have always been open-minded. Those three hypotheses and scenarios have been continually reviewed and continue to do so to this day. But But as Mr. Dawson has said, at the minute, with the information that we have received and reviewed, there is not a single piece of information or evidence to suggest that there is any third-party involvement in this investigation. And that continues and will continue to do so until we have reviewed all the information received. So in terms of the actual timeline, Nicola Bulley dropped her children off at school at about 8:40 on Friday the 27th of January. That was normal. And she then proceeded, after chatting to a couple of people in the school yard, walked up Garstang Road and onto the river path over an iron bridge that takes you down to these fields. We know that because there are witnesses who have identified her and also from her phone data. We know that Nicola entered the field and made a couple of messages on her mobile phone, one to her boss and one to a friend, making arrangements for a play date for her children. And at 9:01, we know she logged into a work call on Teams. Again, there has been lots of speculation about this. This was a perfectly normal call for Nicola to have. It was work related. She would never have had the microphone or camera on because it was more of an informative session. She didn't need to sign into it. She did so to enable her with her business. So I know there have been inquiries as to whether anybody else on the Teams call would have been able to hear or provide us with any information. I can assure you from the outset that was investigated thoroughly and that is not the case. We know at this time that there were a number of dog walkers in the area, and we've been extremely fortunate from the very start of this inquiry to have a number of witnesses, key witnesses, who know Nicola. So there is no miscommunication about the identification of who is in that field. And also, we've viewed a substantial amount of CCTV. Again, whilst we can't cover the whole area with CCTV, we've been really fortunate in that we've had a lot, which has really been able to help us in pin down both Nicola's movements and also the movements of key witnesses, which is why we were able to give a timeline of events quite quickly, but reiterating that we were remaining open-minded to all three of those scenarios. So Nicola was last seen in the field, which we've called the upper field, at about 9:10 that morning. At that time, everything seemed normal. She was walking her dog Willow, who was off the lead. And again, a number of issues and inconsistencies have been raised in relation to Willow and her harness. It was really normal for Willow not to have her harness on. They never kept the harness on when they were in that field. The harness would be taken off Willow when they entered the field and would only be put back on when they were ready to leave the field. So at approximately 9:10, a witness that knows her had the last sighting, and that was at the upper field. When I say an approximate time, it is that, but we are basing that on obviously the times that we can say that witness left the field. So I'm quite confident it is around that time. We then know from digital data that at some time around 9:20, we believe that Nicola's handset had moved towards the bench area. Again, there have been questions raised about her phone, whether that would have been in her possession when whatever happened has happened. But again, I'd just like to point her out that it's really normal for Nicola, when in a Teams call, to be holding her phone out in front of her, listening to it. And we can say from a witness that knows her that morning, that is what she was doing. So that would explain why she doesn't have her phone in her pocket, as I know a number of people have raised. We then know at about 9:33, a local dog walker who is walking a dog comes across the bench and finds Willow untied, running between the bench and the gate. The mobile phone is on the bench, face upwards, still logged into the Teams call, and Willow's harness is halfway between the bench and the riverside. That witness makes a number, before returning home, she then returns and makes a number of phone calls to people, because at that point she doesn't know who the dog belongs to or who the phone belongs to, and doesn't know how to get in touch with people. She makes a number of inquiries with a local vet, who can't assist her, and following a number of inquiries, eventually people return to the bench, recover the handset and Willow, and we find out that obviously they belong to Nicola. The alarm is then raised with the local school, who then in turn contact Paul, Nicola's partner, who then makes to the scene. Just moving on to CCTV, like I've said, we are really fortunate in this inquiry that we've been able to narrow down a lot of the witnesses in the area's movements and to some extent Nicola's. But we can't complete that totally. The area at the top of the field, Rowan Water, has CCTV that covers the gate that enters the field and the front of the site. That is working. The site managers have been cooperating with us and so supportive of this investigation at every stage. And we can say that Nicola has not entered that area or left. We can also say that nobody that we haven't traced and spoken to and discounted has left or entered Rowan Water. The second point on CCTV is allotment lane. Again, we've been really, really fortunate, despite it being such a rural area, that we've got numerous sites of CCTV on that road. And that is why we can be confident that Nicola has not gone down that road. Unfortunately, the main entrance and exit to the fields is via the river path, as we refer to it. And that river path goes back to Garstang Road. You can fork off slightly, which takes you at the back of the Grapes pub, which would bring you back onto the main road. But again, that is covered by CCTV, and we know she hasn't left via that entrance. So talking about the river path, this has always been, and we've made this really clear in previous briefings and bulletins, that this has been our focus. And to do this, because of the lack of CCTV on the main road, we've had to appeal numerous times for motorists and cyclists in the area to send us through any potential clips of dashcam. And our intention is to review every one of those, however small they might be, to make sure that on none of those Nicola is seen. At this stage, none of that dashcam has indicated that Nicola is there. However, I'd just like to point out we are still reviewing those pieces of information. What I can say, which we've established only yesterday, was that if Nicola had left out of the river path and turned right, she has not reached the Grape pub. And we can say that because we have CCTV covering both sides of that pavement. So moving on to Nicola's phone, I've talked to you about the discrepancies that have been flagged up with the Teams call, whether she would have had that in front of her, whether she would have had it in a pocket. And we can say with confidence that Nicola that morning, whilst logged into her Teams call, had the phone out in front of her listening to that call. We have, of course, like you would in any major inquiry, done an exhaustive amount of work with that phone. We have digital media experts doing everything we can with that. And that has enabled us to help us with her movements in the field, corroborated by the witness accounts. Moving on to the Fitbit, as I know this has been of interest. Unfortunately, despite many technicians and specialists looking at this, there is no further information that we can gain from that because it hadn't been synced for a number of days. Just in relation to digital inquiries, there is further work that we are doing on Nicola's social media accounts this morning. The family are totally aware of this, but this work that we're doing might show Nicola as being online. I want to make this really clear. We have control of this phone. This will be the police that is doing these inquiries, and that nobody needs to be concerned or to contact the incident room in relation to this. Moving back to my original explanation of the scenarios that were under consideration, I've expressed before the hypotheses have been continually reviewed based on the information that is known to the inquiry team and the inquiry team only. Whilst other people may speculate and spread rumours. There is no evidence whatsoever or information, and there has been a vast amount reviewed, I can assure you, in the last almost 3 weeks to suggest any third-party involvement or Nicola leaving that field. However, this is an ongoing inquiry. We've got a large, dedicated team, and as you can imagine, vast amount of information, some relevant and some not, coming in on a daily basis. So whilst my main working line of inquiry at the moment is that Nicola, based on the information known to me from the incident and of Nicola herself and the information and vulnerabilities that have been given to us by her family, that is my main working hypothesis at this time. That does not mean that we aren't continuing to investigate every single line of inquiry, because I can assure you we are, and we, as much as everybody else in this country, wants to find out what's happened to Nicola to be able to give her 2 children the answers they deserve. So in terms of persistent myths that keep being referred to in the press, the derelict house, which is across the other side of the river, that has been searched 3 times with the permission of the owner, and Nicola is not in there. The red van, we're really, really grateful to members of the public for ringing into the inquiry. We wouldn't have got this far without everybody's help. But I think it's also really obvious that we are being inundated with false information, accusations and rumours, which is distracting us from our work. The red van has been reported that it was in the area on the morning of the 27th, like many other hundreds of cars that morning. We're really grateful for the witness who has told us about that, and we are continuing to make inquiries to try and track down that specific van. But from my perspective, being in possession of all the facts and information of this case, I do not believe that to be suspicious, but we are continuing to investigate that so that we can identify whoever was in the area that time to make sure that they can't give us any further information that will assist the investigation. There's also been mention of a number of fishermen that have been seen that morning who again were described as suspicious. I myself don't find it suspicious that fishermen would be in the area of a river that morning or carrying fishing rods. But there was some suggestion that one of these males might have been looking to cover his face. We have made numerous appeals for these fishermen to come forward. We have made contact with the local angling clubs, and we have also ascertained the time of the witness passing down that road and checked the CCTV at the Grapes pub, which covers that end of Garstang Road, and we can't see any of those fishermen at that time on that day. But we are continuing to try and trace these people. Again, I would urge that they are not necessarily suspicious to me, but I'm really keen to trace them to make sure that there's no further information that they can give us that will assist. In terms of the glove that has been recovered, you'll no doubt be aware that TikTokers have been playing their own private detectives and have been in the area. A glove has been recovered that is not believed to be relevant to the investigation. It is not Nicola's, but we have got that in our possession. Lastly, there has been some mention of CCTV specifically at the caravan sites that hasn't been working and that's suspicious itself. That is not the case. We have been helped and assisted beyond all belief by the caravan owners in this. The whole community wants to find Nicola and wants to give the family the answers that they deserve. Lastly, the family, and they are the most important part of this. And all this speculation and rumour is affecting them. They've got a loving daughter, sister, partner and mother who is missing, and that is my priority and the priority of the investigation team, and always has, and we can't be detracted from that. I have met the family on a number of occasions and will continue to do so, and they are kept through regularly updated throughout with our progress. There are dedicated family liaison officers who speak daily to the family, and only yesterday spent a significant amount of time with Paul. I can assure you that this investigation has been thoroughly investigated, no differently than any other major investigation from the outset. and that my absolute priority is to do everything we can to provide the answers to Nicola's 2 daughters who need to know where their mummy is. And whilst we have shared information today about specific individual vulnerabilities specific to this case on Nicola, I would ask you to respect the family's privacy in respect of those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. As I mentioned, we've shared more detail in this conference than would normally be the case, but intend that by doing so, both in terms of the scale of the investigation and the resources and the intensity of it, and something around Nicola's vulnerabilities, that we're able to counter some of the, and I will be clear, but ill-informed speculation and conjecture that has at times distracted the investigation from what ought to have been its priorities. It has been a distraction. That is potentially damaging to the investigation, the community of St Michael's, and most importantly, Nicola's family. However, we've had incredible support from the public and continue to have a dedicated investigation team working on this inquiry, and we will continue to be as transparent as we possibly can be. You must appreciate, though, that when we do come forward, what we bring forward must be factual too. Anybody with relevant information can submit it through the Major Incident Public Portal, the MIP, the link to which is available on the Lancashire Police website. So thank you, and both Becky and I are happy to take some questions.
Guys, keep your hands up.
Hi there, Detective Superintendent. Can you just give us a bit more information about what Nikki's partner told you about her vulnerabilities, and why was it that you had to then identify her as high risk? And also, this is the 20th day that Nicola Bulley has been missing. How confident are you and your team that you will find her alive?
Okay, so firstly, to cover the information about Paul, it's normal in any missing person investigation that you obviously gather as much information at an early stage about the person in question, which is no different, and we did that with Paul. I'm not going to go into the details of those individual vulnerabilities. I've asked you to respect the family who are going through unimaginable pain and distress at this moment. But those vulnerabilities based our decision making in terms of grading Nicola as high risk, and have continued to form part of my investigation throughout. In terms of, sorry, what was the second part to your question?
It's the 20th day since
Absolutely.
Nicola has been missing. How confident are you and your team that you'll find Nicola Bulley alive?
I hope with all my heart that we find Nicola Bulley alive, more than anything.
How confident are you?
I have told you that my working hypothesis is at the moment, through all the information that we have gathered, that the likelihood is that Nicola has unfortunately gone in the river. However, I have to stress this because this has been continually misconstrued. I cannot be 100% certain of that at the minute because we are continuing. It's a live investigation and there is always information coming in. But we are in the 20th day. We have had a thorough, dedicated, meticulous investigation, and there is not one single piece of information that has come to note that would suggest that Nicola has left those fields.
Matt Drake, ITV's Good Morning Britain. 2 questions. First of all, can we confirm whether Nicola was wearing a headset at the time she was listening?
No, she wasn't.
So she wasn't, so she was listening to it directly.
Yes.
Secondly, as you come to the end, onto the Iron Bridge, you turn left. So right, you say
Yes.
that's been covered off
Yes.
by CCTV.
Yes.
Are we saying that to the left is a blind spot, and if so, how far down? There's no CCTV there, I take it, that's been recovered.
Not on that main road. I can't give you the specifics of the exact how many sites, but we were basically scoping off all the, as you turn left,
Yeah.
we're trawling all that area for any CCTV that we have got, but the main road, that area there, isn't covered, unfortunately. So from the Iron Bridge, to the school, if you will,
Yes.
there is nothing there, which is why it's so important for the dash cam, because even though they're going to be tiny bite sizes of information, they're not going to be as good as being able to view CCTV. We need to be able to piece together as much of that portion of the road as we can.
And of those 700 cars, how many have been spoken to, or what percentage have been spoken to?
I can't give you exact figures on that because obviously there will have been more today that have come in, but a substantial amount.
Are there any particular cars that we're looking for that you can appeal for
No.
today?
No, they've all had individual letters to the cars that we know have gone past in the area, not that particular, but in the area. And we've asked for positive responses only, and any dash cam that's come back in, which there has been an amount of, we have reviewed. Some of it doesn't show anything, some is still being reviewed. But at the minute, there is absolutely no sightings of Nicola on there.
Danny, BBC.
Did I hear correctly that you were appointed SIO on the Monday?
I was, yes.
Have Lancashire Police missed the trick? Nicola Bulley went missing on Friday, and SIO appointed not until the Monday. Was enough done in the first 24, 48 hours?
I can probably take this. I am satisfied that, as Becky has described, following the initial report of Nicola as being missing to Lancashire Police, immediately she was graded as high risk. That in itself is a significant level of risk that does bring with it focused attention and significant resources. So I'm satisfied that, given there was no evidence of any crime having occurred at that first point of the report, yes, it was handled appropriately, but as the days began to progress, as would be normal with any high-risk missing person investigation, who hadn't turned up, hadn't been found by Monday, we began to layer in the expertise of a senior investigating officer with all the investigation infrastructure that comes with that.
Jamie Williamson from Bauer Media. It took Peter Folding and SGI 3 days to determine that Nicky wasn't in that stretch of river. How long will it take Lancashire Police, and how long will you continue searching the River Wye until you come to the same determination?
And again, it's probably something I can take. The search effort, both water-based and land-based, continues this week. There are police assets, including underwater search officers, continuing that exercise this week. Water is an inherently challenging medium to search, and the River Wye is tidal and flows out into the estuary near Cockerham Sands, and parts of the river have been searched repeatedly because of the shifting water patterns and tidal nature of it. We have taken the best expertise from people who are experts in the field around coastal movement of water and movement of water on inland waterways. I retain all hope. But the reality is there will be a point at which I need to review, in conjunction with Beck as the SIO and the search managers, the extent and proportionality of continuing to deploy significant search resources around the River Wye and on the land-based options we have there. So for this week, the search effort is continuing. There will be a point in the days ahead where I do need to review that.
Nicola, BBC. Social media video makers and wannabe detectives, have they been an annoyance or a hindrance in the inquiry?
Take that if you want. Yes, it has significantly distracted the investigation. In 29 years police service, I've never seen anything like it. Some of it's been quite shocking and really hurtful to the family. Obviously, we can't disregard anything, and we've reviewed everything that's come in, but of course it has distracted us significantly. But as long as we are prioritising, which we do constantly, on the information that's coming in, that will not distract us from the priority actions that we have been completing.
Holly Burnett, Daily Mirror. I'm just wondering, obviously you're talking about the evidence that you're working with and obviously your main hypothesis. Should you have cordoned off the bench and got forensics in so that you could be more certain that you can rule out things like foul play and be absolutely certain, rather than just saying that, you know, it's a main hypothesis?
Yeah, I understand why you would ask that. But at the end of the day, it was treated as a high risk missing from home immediately. And the officers that dealt with it in those days had the land searched immediately, which included the area around the bench.
Is it not significant that Willow was running between the bench and the gate, not the bench and the water's edge? I mean, I don't expect to be an expert on dog behaviour.
And I'm not either.
But what do you make of that? What does anyone, what have you consulted on that?
We have consulted people and we're ongoing with consulting people, but obviously I can't speak to the dog. And all we can say is that he was running backward and forwards and he was still in the area where Nicola's possessions were, and that's all I can say.
But was more interested in the gate and the path leading away from there than the actual water?
At that time, when the witness found Willow was between the bench and the gate. However, I have to point out the dog could have got out from there.
We'll take one more question, please, everybody.
I'll go with Ramirez from Talk TV. Has the Police and Crime Commissioner had a meeting to voice any of his concerns surrounding this?
The Police and Crime Commissioner has been kept apprised, but the constabulary has operational independence and has been carrying out the investigation, and information stays with the investigation. That's the nature of policing. Just given I'd said one more question, and I'll just give it to Nick to bring one more in. Thank you.
Right, yeah. Thank you. Hannah Alapper from the Sunday Times. You've outlined what you've done so far, which is great and really helpful. Thank you. But are you able to talk us through sort of what your plan might be, where the investigation will go in the coming week or so, and also what impact is this having on Lancashire Police resources, and when do you think you may, you may look at scaling it down? And just one final point. I know you said you weren't going to elaborate on the vulnerabilities, but I've had 3 text messages in the past 5 minutes asking what they are and what that's about. So if we want to sort of dial down the speculation, might it make sense to make that clear?
I'll take most of that, I think. I think in terms of the scale of the investigation, it is continuing. That will be kept under review, but it is at as much of a peak of resourcing and intensity as it has been. Both the search and the investigation side will remain under review, but we are a significant sized force. Where necessary, we've drawn officers and expertise in from across the force. Our business as usual, policing communities of Lancashire has remained unaffected by this. We've sought support nationally, and we can draw on mutual aid from other police forces and regions if we need to. We will keep it under review. Becky is an experienced senior investigating officer and will continue to follow the evidence, the facts objectively as any SIO would do. In terms of the vulnerabilities, I feel we've said as much as we can about that. It is personal, private information known to the investigation, but foremost in our thoughts, in addition to the integrity of the investigation, is the privacy of Nicola's family. So we've said as much as we can with that. So regrettably, we can't take any more questions. Thank you very much, but I do thank you for your attention today. Thank you very much.
The force was very much in the national spotlight earlier this year during the huge and high-profile operation to try to find Nicola Bulley. You've commissioned an independent review into that operation, haven't you? I know you won't want to say anything that will prejudge that, but can I just ask you this? Have you ordered that review because you think it's good practice, or because you have particular concerns yourself?
I think for me, thoughts remain with Nicola's family and her friends, but what is an absolutely tragic time. And every single step of the way that we're going with this review, family liaison officers are in place, and we're making sure that we do it with as much sensitivity to them as possible. The reason that we've commissioned the review is because, yes, it is good practice when such a major story has come out and there's been such public concern to address that public concern and ask the questions and get somebody independent to come in. I'm also concerned that in a modern policing era, in a policing investigation that was sadly correct in its hypothesis all the way along, in which officers predicted correctly, very sadly, even the day that Nicola's body would tragically be found. And yet it became such a story, particularly in the national papers, about bungling, incompetent cops, yet they were right all along. So how did the police lose control of that narrative? And I'm grateful to outlets like the Lancashire Post, BBC Radio Lancashire, Lancashire Telegraph, Blackpool Gazette, all who were very measured and sensible in their reporting and listened to what the police were saying. But that wasn't the case with a lot of the national newspapers. And then this became an internationalized, sensationalized story. And TikTok in particular, and online amateur detectives pushing conspiracy theories out, which resulted in vile abuse towards Nicola's family and friends. How did that get so out of hand? And that is one of the clear work streams for the review of the College of Policing.
The criticism that was aimed at the force wasn't just directed at the confidence that they had in their hypothesis about what sadly proved prescient had actually happened to Nicola Bulley. It was also about the release of sensitive information about her, wasn't it? Was there any point during that investigation that you felt uncomfortable or had pause for thought?
Well, the ICO have made their statement on the release of that information. I have my own personal private views. This is one area of work stream for the college, so that's not something I would want to preempt. And I think I'll let the college have their do their work on that, and then we'll be happy to discuss that once that review is concluded. But I wouldn't want to preempt the outcome of that.
Just finally on this, how close was your contact with the force during that period? Because obviously the force has to remain operationally independent.
I can't direct and control operational resources, so my job is not to ring up the chief constable in the morning and tell him where to put which officers and how to run investigations. They are the professionals and know how to do this. Am I there to hold to account and make sure that, yes, in times of difficulty, the constabulary has the resources that they need and the backing that they need, but also to make sure that I'm keeping a close eye and holding the force to account in my role effectively as the regulator for Lancashire Police, as the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. So I was receiving regular briefings from the chief officer team on the case as it unfolded, including on Saturdays and Sundays as we progressed through that case.
So I just want to review all of this before I move on. Firstly, Sally Riley stated Nicola was last seen at 9:15 on the towpath of the River Wire, and that Willow was found an hour later at 10:15. Where have these witnesses gone? Why did the timeline change? Why no need for dash cam before she was last seen? Like, just in case somebody had spotted something and they needed to refer back to it. Why, several days on, did the police not know how Nicola got to the village, as they had already spoken to her partner Paul, who would have given them that information? We heard Sally Riley state that staff waded the shallow parts of the river upstream, around the bench, and downstream, all the way out to the sea. Most of the way there, the river is not wide. Most of the river along the banks are shallow, so that means both police and Peter Faldon's sonar couldn't see her body on the riverbed. Peter stated he had all the evidence that she was not on the riverbed. And police staff waded the banks where the reeds were, and her body wasn't there either. Both Peter, the police, and several other teams outside the police brought in dogs, cadaver dogs. And why did not one of them, like, what's the chances of not one of them picking up Nicola's scent? So if they have evidence that she wasn't lying on the riverbed, they believe she must be in the reeds. So how did they not find her? The dogs, the police, the divers, how did none of them find her in the reeds? Why the change in the timeline? Why were the witnesses from earlier timeline removed? Why was Nicola's last sighting gone from the towpath to the upper field? Why did they need to point out that Willow always had her harness off in the field, when photos of Willow shows she sometimes has the harness on and sometimes has it off? Why were they particularly interested in the time between the last witness at 9:10 and the phone being on the bench at 9:20? Why not be interested in the last witness at 9:10 and the phone being found at 9:33? Why did it take so long for the police to be contacted? Did they not find this strange? Why did the police have to mention any theory as to what happened to Nicola, therefore giving the family no hope and presuming Nicola was already dead? Why did they believe she went into the river when they said there was no evidence of her going into the river? How did they know that Nicola wasn't hidden inside a vehicle? Why did Sally Riley state that they discounted the area of the river? Is it because they were now thinking something did in fact happen to Nicola, or that she went further down to end up in the river? Why did the information that Nicola's partner Paul gave to the police point them in the direction of the river and nowhere else? Also, Rebecca Smith stated that her main theory was that Nicola was in the river. She also gave Nicola's family no hope. Why did the camera point into the field in Rowan Water not capture Nicola? If the camera didn't capture Nicola, how come they be sure someone from Rowan didn't re-enter the field? And why did they not find it suspicious that a strange red van was parked near a children's school and it was reported as being suspicious by 2 people? If a local had said they seen 2 strange men dressed in dark clothing carrying fishing rods the day before Nicola went missing, and seen one of them the day of Nicola's disappearance, acting strange and hiding their face, why did Rebecca Smith not find that suspicious? A stained glove was found by a member of the public. Fair enough, Rebecca Smith said it had nothing to do with the case of Nicola. But why was a member of the public able to find something like this when the police had stated they had done a thorough search within a 1 kilometre radius of the bench? Why did Andrew Snowden make out the police were psychic, that they even knew when Nicola's body would be found? Andrew Snowden seemed more concerned about people's opinion, and that's what he wants looked into with regards to the investigation. Both himself and the police blame everyone but themselves, including Nicola herself, when they released the information on Nicola of her private details. I now want to take a look at why people have lost their trust in the police service and the relevant authorities. They always tell us that they have areas of learning, but they actually never learn from these mistakes. I'm just going to highlight some cases where either those in power use that power in cases of corruption or criminal actions. Now, this is just from Lancashire area. Former head of police watchdog charged with rape. Lancashire police officer sentenced after sharing sensitive data. Lancashire police officer jailed after sleeping with crime victim and sending sex photo to another. 2 Lancashire police officers will appear in court charged with perverting the course of justice following an independent Office for Police Conduct (IOPC) investigation. Lancashire police officer to stand trial next week accused of trying to kill woman in hotel. Lancashire police officer admits inappropriate conduct with 6 women. Did Lancashire police fail another mother? Kiana Dawes' family accuse force in Nicola Bulley fiasco of abandoned domestic abuse victim who killed herself aged 23. Leave a note saying, "I hope my life saves another by police acting faster." A police officer who threatened to make up an offence suspended after outcry. I have a video clip of this one.
Mark, you're harassing me. What for? I haven't done nothing wrong. Tell these, mate. What, go on. Give them
you've done nothing wrong.
Do you want to give me the definition of harassment? Give your details. You want me to go? Give me the keys. Sit in your car, shut up. And if you want to fucking step to me and put things in your chest out and stuff like that, then fine. I'll lock you up. We'll do that, shall we? I'll make something up. Public order. Screw up to a police officer. Shall I do that? Who are they going to believe? Me or you? Who are they going to believe? Me or you? You can film all you want.
Yeah, I will do, mate. Don't worry about it.
Show some respect.
Now, it didn't take me long to find all this information. And I'm sure if I stayed going, I would have found a lot more. God only knows what I would have found. Okay, everyone, I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm releasing this on the eve of the first day of the inquest. So keep an eye out. I'll be doing a video on everything that was revealed on the first day. I'll give you all my opinion on what I think of it. Bye for now. Thanks for watching. This video was for entertainment purposes only. Everything used throughout this video is of fair use.